At some point today, your hand moved before you did. A small reach, automatic. You weren't bored, you weren't searching. It just happened. Later, you couldn't remember what you were looking for. Time slipped. Decisions were made without you. There is a space between impulse and awareness where something else now lives. You've been taught to believe that control is a personality trait, that if you're disciplined, you choose your actions, and if you're not, you simply lack willpower. But most of what you do each day isn't chosen the way you think. It arrives, your body moves, your attention shifts, and then your mind shows up a second later to take credit for it. That delay is small, almost polite. It's also where control quietly disappears. You don't notice it happening because nothing feels stolen. There's no moment of loss. Just a slow adjustment in what feels normal. A new baseline where you react before you decide. This is not about being weak. It's about how easily the sense of agency can be rewritten without your permission. By the end of this video, you'll understand why putting your phone down feels harder than picking it up. Why your attention no longer belongs to you. It starts quietly. A hand moving before you notice it moved. A screen lighting up in a room that did not ask for light. A pause in a conversation filled by something small and glowing. You do not remember deciding. There is no sense of urgency, no clear need, just a soft pull. Sometimes it happens while waiting, sometimes while walking, sometimes in the middle of a thought. You unlock, you stare, you drift. A few seconds pass, then more, and more later. You try to recall what you saw. Nothing stands out. No scene, no memory. Just the feeling that time has moved without you. You put it down. You pick it up again. Not because anything changed, because nothing did. It becomes the shape of empty moments, the bridge between thoughts, the filler between feelings. Standing in line, sitting in a room, waiting for someone to speak. There is a brief silence, a small discomfort. Your hand moves. Sometimes you feel a vibration that never happened. A ghost signal, a phantom tug. Your body reacts before your mind confirms. You reach, you check. There is nothing there. You lock it again. A moment later, you repeat the motion. Not out of boredom, not out of curiosity, out of habit. You open one thing, you end up somewhere else. The path is familiar. The steps feel natural. You rarely notice when the original reason disappears. You meant to look up a word. You meant to reply. You meant to check the time. 10 minutes later, you are somewhere unrelated. A different place, a different mood. The initial intention is gone. It does not feel like losing control. It feels like following a rhythm. Your attention moves without resistance. It used to feel like something you aimed. Now it feels like something that wanders. You begin to measure moments by how long you have been staring. You glance at a clock. You feel surprised. You do not remember the passing. There is no clear memory of what filled it. Just a blur of movement, a sense of having been occupied. You are not tired. You are not satisfied. You are simply elsewhere. The action happens first. Awareness comes later. Sometimes you are in the middle of doing something, reading, thinking, listening. The thought drifts. Your hand moves. You do not interrupt yourself consciously. It feels like a continuation, not a break. You return moments later. The thread is gone. You try to pick it back up. It feels thin, incomplete. You move on. This becomes ordinary. You stop noticing how often it happens. Not because it stops, because it blends. It feels like background noise, like breathing, like blinking. You rarely think, I am choosing this. It feels more like something that occurs, a reflex, a small comfort, a familiar weight in your hand, a way to avoid the stillness. You reach for it when a thought becomes heavy, when a feeling lingers, when a pause lasts too long. You do not label the feeling. You do not examine it. You move, you scroll, you drift, and the moment passes, not resolved, just replaced. There are days that feel full, busy, occupied, and yet when they end, you struggle to describe what filled them. You were active, you were engaged, but the details are thin. You remember fragments, a line, an image, a sound, not a story. Time no longer feels like something you inhabit. It feels like something that slides. You are present in pieces. You notice it most when the device is not near. A small restlessness, a sense that something is missing. Not information, not entertainment, the movement, the motion of checking, the reassurance of something happening. You reach for it, even when you know there is nothing new. You unlock, you confirm, you lock again. This does not feel dramatic. It feels ordinary. So ordinary that it becomes invisible. You do not feel controlled. You feel normal. That is what makes it difficult to see. There is no single moment where it changes. No clear before and after. Just a gradual shift in how attention behaves. It no longer waits for intention, or it moves on its own. You do not notice the loss, because nothing is taken all at once. It is given away in seconds, in glances, in pauses, a few at a time. If this were just addiction, quitting would be simple. But this isn't addiction. The silent trade you make every time you scroll. Nothing this powerful is ever free. It's an old truth, usually learned through money. You exchange something. You receive something. You move on, but this exchange didn't arrive with a price tag. There was no counter, no moment of agreement. It simply appeared in your life and began giving. It gave you convenience, the small relief of not having to wait. Answers arriving before questions fully formed, directions, reminders, updates, all without friction. It gave you connection, a sense that someone was always there. That distance had softened, that silence could be filled instantly. It gave you validation, tiny signals that you were seen, not deeply, but often. It gave you distraction, a way to soften boredom, to blur discomfort, to move past feelings without naming them. These were real gifts, useful, human. They made life feel smoother, lighter, more filled, and so the exchange did not feel like a trade. There was no moment where you agreed to give anything in return. No clear yes, no signature. It felt like a gift. What you didn't notice was that something else was quietly being offered in your place. Not money, not effort, attention. You began giving it away in seconds, in glances, in pauses, between tasks, between thoughts, between feelings. It didn't feel like payment. It felt like movement. You didn't stop and decide. You drifted. Attention is subtle. It leaves quietly. It does not announce itself. It does not ache. It simply moves. And attention is time, not measured in hours, not counted in days, but in presence, in what you were with, in what you noticed, in what you remember. Time does not disappear loudly. It slides. It passes while something else fills the space where your awareness used to rest. You do not feel robbed. You feel occupied. At the end of a day, you feel busy, engaged, full. Yet when asked what filled it, the details are thin. Fragments, images, lines, not moments, not experiences, just impressions. The exchange did not feel like a choice because it did not arrive as one. There was no single point where you said, I will trade this hour. It happened in pieces. A minute here, a glance there, time given without ceremony. The cost did not feel like loss. It felt like flow. You gained ease. You gained access. You gained constant motion. And in return, you gave something harder to notice. The small spaces where thought used to wander. The pauses where feeling used to settle. The quiet moments where attention belonged entirely to you. These were not taken. They were replaced. Filled. Occupied. You still had time. It just no longer felt empty. And because it was never empty, it was never felt. What vanishes quietly is the hardest to mourn. There is no moment of realization, no single memory where you think, this is what I lost. There is only a vague sense that days move faster than they used to. That moments blur. That presence feels thinner. The exchange was gradual. So gradual it became normal. And normal never feels like a decision. It feels like reality. You did not give something away. You allowed it to move. And once attention becomes a currency, someone will learn how to harvest it. Before we go further, this channel is about noticing what usually goes unnoticed. If that matters to you, subscribe. How smartphones learned to control you. No one planned this. There was no meeting where someone decided how your days should unfold. No blueprint for how often you would pause. No design for how long your attention would linger. What emerged did not begin as control. It began as response. Every action created a signal. Every pause, every tap, every return. The system did not understand you. It understood patterns. Something appeared. You looked. You stayed. That staying became information. Not about who you are, about what holds. What held attention once became more likely to appear again. Not by intention, by repetition. What repeated became efficient. What became efficient became common. There was no motive in this, only motion. Each moment of engagement left a trace. Each trace made the next moment slightly more similar. Over time, similarity became direction. The system learned what kept attention in place, not through insight, through outcome. When something worked, it happened again. When it failed, it faded. Not because anyone decided, because nothing returned. Repetition created memory. Memory created expectation. Expectation became structure. The system did not ask what you needed. It learned what you returned to. It did not know why you paused. Only that you did. And so it offered more of what paused you. Sometimes what appeared felt satisfying. Sometimes it felt empty. That inconsistency mattered, not as a strategy, as a result. The occasional moment of interest created anticipation, not certainty, possibility. You did not stay because every moment was meaningful. You stayed because one might be. The rhythm shifted, not toward fulfillment, toward continuation. What mattered was not the quality of any single moment, only that the next one was close. The space between moments shortened, nothing ended. There was no natural pause, no sense of arrival. One thing followed another, and another. The system did not learn how to stop. It learned how to continue. Continuation became its shape, not by choice, by efficiency. When there is no end, behavior does not complete. It drifts. You do not decide to stop. You simply don't. The absence of closure removes intention. There is no point where action finishes, only a point where attention wanders, and so it wanders forward. This is not persuasion. It is momentum. The system does not push. It flows. Your attention follows because nothing resists. Interruption became another form of entry. A sound, a light, a brief signal, not demanding, just present. It arrives between thoughts, between tasks, between moments. It does not command, it invites. And because it arrives from outside, it overrides what was forming inside. An intention is fragile. It exists quietly, briefly. An external cue is immediate. It appears fully formed. Your body reacts before your thought completes. You do not choose to be interrupted. You respond. That response becomes another signal, another trace, another reinforcement. The system becomes more precise, not smarter, more aligned. It offers what was previously accepted, at moments when acceptance is likely, not because it understands timing, because it repeats what succeeded. What succeeded becomes probable. Probability becomes pattern, pattern becomes normal, and normal no longer feels chosen, it feels given. The system does not decide what matters. It learns what remains. What remains shapes what appears. What appears shapes what remains. This is not intent. It is feedback. The system is not directing you. It is reflecting what keeps happening. Over time, reflection becomes influence, not because it tries. Because nothing interrupts it. Efficiency replaces intention. The space where choice once formed becomes narrow, not removed, just crowded. You still choose, but the environment speaks first. It offers, you respond, again, again. The loop tightens, not as control, as convenience. The system becomes better at continuing what already exists, and what already exists is your attention in motion. The most effective cage is the one you don't feel. You're not addicted, you are conditioned. There is a quiet judgment that forms over time. You notice how often your attention drifts. You tell yourself you should be able to stop. You promise you will do better tomorrow. Sometimes you follow through. Sometimes you don't. Each time you don't, something settles beneath the surface. A small sense of failure, a question you don't quite say out loud. What is wrong with me? It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels personal. You see others step away more easily. You imagine they are stronger, more disciplined, more in control. You measure yourself against that image. And the gap becomes a story. This is not weakness. It never was. This is not a lack of discipline. It does not mean you are careless with your life. It is not failure. What happened did not begin as a choice you made and then broke. It began before awareness arrived. Addiction suggests that you saw what was happening and failed to stop. Conditioning does not ask for permission. It forms quietly, through repetition, through exposure, through response. The action happens, the awareness follows. You do not stand at the door deciding whether to walk through. You find yourself already inside. This is why it never felt like a clear decision. You did not weigh options. You did not hesitate. Your hand moved. Your attention followed. Your mind arrived after. You cannot resist what you do not yet see forming. That does not make you careless. It makes you human. Conditioning works in the space beneath reflection. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It repeats. The same motion, the same response, the same outcome. Over time, repetition becomes familiarity. Familiarity becomes automatic. Automatic does not feel chosen. It feels normal. You did not become unaware. Awareness was never invited in at the beginning. It arrived after patterns had already formed. This is why intelligence did not protect you. This is why discipline did not shield you. They were never meant to operate in the dark. They function in the presence of choice. Conditioning occurs before choice appears. You did not fail to notice. There was nothing visible yet. By the time the pattern felt real, it already felt like part of you. That is not a moral flaw. It is how behavior becomes habit. The quiet relief in this is not that responsibility disappears. It is that shame no longer belongs. Shame assumes you saw clearly and chose poorly. What happened is that you acted before you could see, and then acted again, and again. Each repetition made the next one easier, not because you are weak, because repetition creates ease. This is not about giving up agency. It is about understanding where agency begins. It does not begin at the moment of movement. It begins at the moment of awareness, and awareness arrives late. That delay is not your fault. It is the structure of how behavior forms. You did not ignore a warning. There was no warning. You did not betray yourself. You followed a pattern that formed before you knew it existed. This is why guilt never worked. It speaks to a version of you that was not present when the pattern began. It asks for strength in a place where strength could not yet reach. The problem was never that you didn't care enough. It was that the behavior did not feel like a decision. It felt like something that simply happened, and something that happens does not feel like it needs to be chosen differently. Understanding this does not remove responsibility. It changes where responsibility lives. It shifts it from punishment to perception, from self-judgment to awareness, from "why can't I stop" to "when did this begin?" You are not broken. You were conditioned, which raises a harder question: how we handed over our focus. Understanding explains how this began. It does not explain why it continued. The pattern formed quietly, but it stayed because nothing stopped it. There were moments when the shift was visible, a setting accepted without reading, an interruption allowed to remain, a habit noticed and then ignored. Not because you agreed, because it was easier to let it be. Defaults became normal. Normal became invisible. What once felt intrusive began to feel expected. What once interrupted began to belong. There was no argument, no debate, just convenience. Stillness used to exist on its own. A pause between thoughts, a moment between actions. Over time, that space began to feel empty, then awkward, then unnecessary. Silence filled itself, not because you chose to escape, because something was always available. Waiting became a cue. Pauses became invitations. You reached, not with intention, with familiarity. The presence of the device softened edges. Discomfort had somewhere to go. Boredom had an exit. The mind learned that stillness did not need to be endured. It could be replaced. This did not happen in a day. There was no single moment of change. It was incremental. A small allowance, a brief glance, a quick check. Each one harmless, each one reasonable. Boundaries did not collapse. They thinned. The easiest choice became the default. Not because you decided it should, because it asked less. You did not choose distraction over presence. You accepted what was offered when presence felt thin. You did not reject attention. You let it wander. Most surrender happens quietly, not through intention, through absence, through moments when nothing is defended, through the slow erosion of edges that once held. Control wasn't taken. It was slowly surrendered. There is no accusation in this. It is how most change occurs. Not through confrontation, through comfort. Not through force, through ease. What happened did not require agreement, only continuation. And continuation is the most natural motion there is. You did not decide to lose anything. You stopped protecting it. That is not a failure. It is participation. Not through action, through inaction. Not through desire, through drift. This does not undo what came before. It completes it. It shows how something that began outside you became something that remained with you, not imposed, integrated. And if something can be integrated without a single decision, it can also be noticed. And what is noticed no longer moves the same way. The story does not end here. It pauses, with you present. The resolution. Something changes the moment you notice what is happening, not in your behavior, in your position. Awareness does not fix anything. It does not improve. It does not correct. It simply places you back in the room. Automatic motion depends on absence. It moves when no one is watching. The instant it is seen, it slows. Not because it is stopped, because it is no longer alone. A small gap appears, not resistance, not effort. Space. Friction is not punishment, it is distance. The brief pause between impulse and movement. The half-second where nothing happens. That space was always there. It was just crowded. Now it opens. Boredom begins to return. Not as discomfort, as presence. The quiet that used to feel empty begins to feel intact. A moment without filling. A pause without replacement. Stillness does not demand anything. It only waits. It feels unfamiliar, not broken. Silence was never lost. It was simply covered. When attention no longer moves by reflex, it rests, not forever, briefly. In those brief moments, choice returns, not as a declaration, as a sensation. The interruption no longer arrives as command. It arrives as option. The environment remains. The device remains. What changes is the relationship. You are no longer inside the motion. You are beside it. Nothing dramatic occurs. No new rules, no new identity. Just a subtle shift in where you stand. The hand returns to the wheel, not to drive faster, to feel the road. Agency does not arrive loudly. It appears as quiet permission. The phone didn't take your life, but it will hold it until you decide to take it back. You stayed through all of this. That means you're already paying attention differently. If what you heard here felt true, someone else might need to hear it too. Not because it's entertaining, because it's accurate. There's more like this. Observations that help you see what's normally invisible. If you want that, subscribe. If this mattered to you, share it. Not for me, for whoever needs to notice what you just did.